What came first for this project? What was the spark?
I sat down one morning and I wanted to write a show that was kind of big and buzzy and fun and fast and had swerves and had stunts. And so I decided that. And the only thing I lacked at that point was a story and any characters or anything. So, but I thought I'm on my way, and I thought I would try and do have a bit of a brainstorm about a high concepts and to try and come up with some what ifs. And so at the end of the morning, the what if I had that I was excited about was, what if you were just sat on your train one day and the doors closed and it drove off without the driver. There you were trapped. And I liked it as a what if because it then suggested lots of other questions, because I thought, well, who would be doing that? How would they do it? How would everyone react? Because I assumed everyone would react differently. Probably like everyone here, I've been on a train that stopped on a line for hours, and some people just had a bit of a meltdown. That was just because the toilet wasn't working. So, at this level, I didn't know what was going to happen. And then it made me think of, well, if that happened, then who would then try and stop that train? Who would sort it out? What would that person look like? Like that, I think. And because there's so many questions, you get about 6 questions along, and you think there might be about 6 hours in this. And there was.
Did you know already that the train journey from Glasgow to London is roughly 6 hours?
Yes, absolutely. Do you know, as anyone knows, when you go in, Lindsay's there. When you pitch a drama, and then often they say to you, "Can you do it in 3 parts?" And I thought, what if I came up with something that was like a 6-hour journey, and then you're always looking for an answer to the reason why. No, I can't do it in 3 parts. Actually, it needs to be 6. And I thought, if I say, well, we can, but it'd have to end in Preston. That might, I had nothing against Preston, obviously, wonderful. But I thought that might not work as well on the Glasgow to London train. And so I finally had a good answer to that.
Yeah. Kate, how did you and Euston Films get involved in the whole thing?
Well, we were looking for things to do with Nick. We were looking for an idea, and Nick is amazing as a writer, and that he's a real idea generator, which is rarer than you might think. And he was like, "What about this one? What about that?" And then the train, and I'm a little bit of a train nerd as well. The train and the real time, I just thought, oh, I love this. I'm completely in. And I have to say that thereafter. This is famous last word. Thereafter, this was the easiest show I have ever pitched. Making it is a whole other story.
Yeah, I'm very difficult.
But to pitch it, you're on a train, it's real time, the door's shut, and you're off. It just, and people start chucking, and you pitch it to people, and they start chucking story ideas in. Oh, yeah. This could happen, that could happen. I remember acting out internally at Fremantle, what happens when the points change unexpectedly, and actually their faces lit up. I know it doesn't sound very likely, but they really did.
Yeah, I should say actually for Kate, that's the thing. You have an idea that you're excited about. It doesn't always happen. There's other people are as excited as you, obviously, and I mentioned it to her on the phone once, and straight away she was just so enthused, and it gives you loads of confidence, doesn't it? So I'm so thankful, she always has been, that I thought, oh God, if that's the reaction of the first person I've mentioned it to, this is a good sign. And then I mentioned it to my friend Hacky Tom. I should mention Hacky Tom, because Hacky Tom sat
Hacky Tom's
somewhere.
here.
There's Hacky Tom.
I thought you were going to be secret.
So for anyone who's at a Bluetoothable distance from Hacky Tom, I hope you've got antivirus, because he'll be into your photos about now. And I mentioned it to Hacky Tom, and he said, I was like, is this possible? And you sent me, Tom, an article about someone went onto a forum on social media and claimed that they were on a plane once, and that they hacked into the plane via the entertainment system, and that they took over flying the plane. That's what they claimed. I love the article, and then the plane company said that's impossible. That's just someone making it up. That captured me there, and I thought, I think we are onto something. Then if we do this, and then the thing with the train that I loved was that it just felt so British to me, because what do we moan about more than anything else? It's either trains or weather, and I'm not sure there's a weather series. I wouldn't write it. Whereas I thought trains, we all know trains, and we can make loads of points about trains, and it's not even party political, is it? Because whatever you think, whatever, wherever you stand on that, we all know trains are rubbish. And we can sort of unite on that and agree. It's quite a nice thing in a disunited time.
Just to be clear, though, you happen to have a friend who knew about hacking, and it's called Hacky Tom.
Hacky
who
Tom
could help you with all of your.
We also had
Ethical
Cyber
hacker.
Andrew,
Cyber
and we also had Trains Gareth.
Trains, Gareth.
Okay.
Yeah,
Are they all here?
they're all code
Excellent.
names, you see.
And the key thing with them, so we put the three of them in a room.
Yeah.
Hacky Tom, Cyber Andrew, and Trains Gareth. And what we said was, here's my idea. And I thought what they'll probably do is say, no, you can't do this. And, they talked using their respective skills for an hour. And at the end of the hour, they said, we could probably do this today. We could go and hack that train. And I thought, that's amazing. And then I got on a train home. I didn't think it was as amazing. I didn't enjoy that journey. But...
Joe, what's it like to be in the middle of this show, where there's a lot of action, there's a lot of I guess effects, VFX going on. You're not necessarily seeing everything that's happening while it's happening around you. What was it like to be in the middle of all of this?
I just love trains. I'm just a huge train fanatic. So for me, it was just the greatest job in the world. No, I'm not really.
That's true, I was in.
No, I mean, it was, obviously we're not on a real train. We're on a train in a studio. They built these carriages. They've got LED screens running alongside the windows where they've filmed like the entirety of the UK. And so we're just pretending everything's happening. And then as the show goes on, there's various dramas and things like that, and there's pyrotechnics and there's all sorts of stuff, and then they got the train moving, and so there was a mixture of Pirates 4D, Thorpe Park, mixed with just good acting, trying to fake everything you could,
So yeah, just make that clear. So you filmed the journey itself. That's playing on LED screens out at the back, outside the windows, if you like, of the fake train.
Of the set. Yeah.
And some people were getting like sick on the train.
Yeah.
There's one.
It all went a little
had to
pale.
step off, and people were taking medication because it's great, and obviously it's great for lighting and things like that. It's not just for our performance. They wouldn't do it if it was for our performance. It's so that it just looks authentic, and you've got the reflections on your face and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And your character, Joe, first, do you insist on all your characters now being called Joe?
Yeah.
Make it easier.
He was called Nigel first. Said, guys, Nigel is never going to stop this train. He's called Joe.
No age. He's right from
Sounds like my kind of lead. This.
right from the start, when the whole thing with the supposedly woman with the baby and then grabbing her back and all of that, when he steps in, he seems to be enjoying himself. He seems to enjoy all of the action. He seems to enjoy being put in the position he's in. Do you think that's fair? Is that what did you make?
Yeah, I guess he's an ex-cop, on the front line. So he gravitates towards this sort of the action element to it. But there is also a reluctance to him stepping forward and becoming the leading man, which sort of becomes apparent as the show goes on. But certainly, I think Nick's idea of making him kind of a copper or something, or an ex-copper, you're not quite sure at this stage, allows you to have somebody who might try and lead this merry band. Somebody who's got some sort of understanding of sort of problematic situations, shall we say?
Do you think he's an action hero? I mean, he's kind of
Absolutely.
a British action
See
hero.
you later, Tom Cruise.
But can I just say also that Joe runs better than any actor I have ever known. It is, you have to realise that we could only have 3 carriages. There are 6 in the story. But that run that Joe does at the end of episode 1, down apparently 6 carriages, whacking the emergency stop button, is one of my favourite moments.
Yeah. I can't do much, but I can run.
You can run.
Hit things.
Bloody good runner.
Good at that.
You have to do your fair share of running, Alex. I can reveal in episode 2, I think, you don't like lifts.
I
So you
used
have
to
to-
run for the counties.
No.
You want to
What?
You're going to run it.
So the scene in episode 2 where you're running up the stairs because
Oh,
you don't
gosh,
take
yeah.
the lift.
Yeah.
That must look exhausting to watch.
It was, yeah. We did, I think we shot some of it in one location and then we did it at another day, or it was a night shoot at like 6 a.m. trying to go up all these flights of stairs and just praying that you don't fall over when they're doing a big aerial shot. It's not what you want.
And what did you make of Vilka? Because she steps up to the plate, doesn't she? That's right from the start. Like she's going to take charge of the situation. That must be incredibly pleasurable to play, sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the main thing that I loved about Abby is her ambition and her want to prove to people that she's got this and she's capable of this. And that carrot is dangled very early on in episode 1 where they say, you know, this is on you. And there's a moment where she knows that she's capable of it. She can do brilliant, beautiful things with computers, but there's that element of self-doubt as well. And that's what I really enjoyed leaning into and playing with.
And she's a tech wizard. Like there's quite a lot of jargon that you have to reel off throughout.
Thanks, Nick.
Saki Tom, actually.
Saki Tom.
How was that for you? How was the jargon and dealing with all that? Are you a tech head?
I'm not, no. I would have just been like, have you tried switching it off and on again? No, so these were all new words that I had to learn. And, you know, half the time I didn't really understand exactly what I was saying. But luckily I had Nick on, I was just texting him on set being like, what does this mean again? And who's this? And you just have to fully commit to it. And just hope that Nick and Saki Tom know what they're talking about.
And what did you make? It's interesting, isn't it? Because as I mentioned at the beginning, the two of you, the two leads in this, don't meet really. How did you find that? And did you ever see each other on set in any way? Did you visit each other just when you were filming your different separate bits?
Yeah, so we were filming in one warehouse in the West End of Glasgow, and these guys were in another warehouse the other side of the city. And we very rarely crossed paths, didn't we? And that was one of the main challenges, I thought, when I read the script. Like, how are we actually going to do this? Not being in the same room and looking into each other's eyes and having that chemistry. But luckily, we found a way around it. And the first couple of days, I came on set with you, didn't I? And was hiding behind the camera, giving him his lines and the Kate Nash song and everything. So we managed to get that chemistry in. And I think it really works in the edit and everything, doesn't it? And and then on set, then we had a working phone with this. John Scoogle was on the other side of the phone, and he was hiding somewhere in the studio, and he was giving me the lines. So it just all felt very natural, and I loved those moments actually, where I was actually quite dreading those moments. But it's a moment of calm in all the chaos. Those little intimate moments.
You mentioned the Kate Nash show. We have to discuss the Kate Nash song. First of all, Nick, was that in the script originally that they suddenly bond over singing a bit of Kate Nash?
No, I think actually I wrote it. It wasn't in the read-through. I don't think, was it?
I
Can't remember.
I think I wrote it after the read-through, and we were looking. It might have been a gainer now, that I think. And you're just looking at a small extra thing. You know, it's for quite a small amount of minutes that they speak to each other, and we want to establish enough of a bond straight off, enough of a connection, you know, to keep us going, to sustain us for the rest of the series. And we're just looking for something small that could work. And I was just like looking at what we had, and I was thinking, well, there's music on in the background. I wonder if there's a song. I tell you, initially I was thinking, will they be able to realise that they're the same age or whatever? And then I thought, it's going to be terrible dialogue, I'm not going to do that. And then I thought, well, unless a song comes on that more or less puts them at the same point, so they learn quite a lot about each other that way. And then you go, it's nice stuff like that, isn't it, where they don't have to say it, they just sing it.
How did you two? Did you dread? I mean, you know, it's like singing the whole thing, but there's a little bit of singing, Joe, that you have to do.
I've been known to sing in the shower, so I thought, how hard can it be? I think, it's part of the fun, isn't it? I think as the show goes on, there's some sort of some interesting dialogue and some crazy sort of outlandish things. But I think that's part of the fun of, you know, making a show like this is finding those things, making them work, you know, because, you know, on the one hand, you're like, oh, God, that's so cheesy. And then you see his Doug's reaction and you're brought back into the real world, and it's really funny and grounding again. So I think that's part of the fun. And I think that's, you know, making a show for the BBC and like making a drama like this, which is very UK centric and all of that. I think it's important to have these moments of levity and these moments of humour, and there's plenty of it as the show goes on.
Yeah, somehow the Kate Nash moment does emphasise the Britishness of it, doesn't it, I think?
Yeah, definitely. And it just, you know, you just instantly, even though you're just meeting these characters for the first time, you kind of get, oh, what age they are, you know, student days, singing that in the karaoke bar. I don't know. Maybe that was just me.
But I think it's also that Jamie, our brilliant lead director, who's here somewhere, can't see, you know, created those moments in the camera of the intimacy. So you almost forget at the beginning, when you're getting to know them individually, that they're not in the same space because they're in the same kind of camera space. They're in the same pictorial space. And I think that we really kind of paid dividends as we go on through, because of the way Nick's writing and Jamie's direction establishes that intimacy so quickly up front.
Kate, what were the biggest challenges? I mean, this strikes me, there seems to be a lot to deal with in this production.
Oh, Jonathan, where's our brilliant producer, Jonathan, here, who is, without whom simply this would not be on the telly, let me tell you. There were so many challenges, some of which can be spoken, some of which can't. But I think that we would like to thank Network Rail, I have to say, who were amazing. They have a film office which was very encouraging. I remember the first day I Googled, do Network Rail have a... Oh, they do. They were fantastic. The writer Neil Cross said to me, I don't see how difficult it could be to shoot a show on a train. I mean, how hard can it be? I was like, Neil, there is no train. And that is the absolute truth. There is, you know, virtually no real train on this screen. Virtually nothing you've seen in episode 1. And I also want to thank Flying Colour, our extraordinary VFX house. There is no train. All the train you see, and until it does something a little bit more fictional in episode 2, I mean, at the moment you'd be forgiven for saying, but I saw it leave Motherwell Station, it looks like a train to me. There was no train where they filmed. That was at Delmuir Station. There was no train there. There was a lot of Marcel Marceau going on from the actors like this into an empty space. And I think Jamie said, could he do one more pass? And they said, no, you can't, because there's a real train coming in now, so you can get out of the way. But there is no train. So that took a lot of ingenuity, and, you know, I have treasured memories of Nick and Jamie with a toy train that he brought in, trying to work out a particular stunt that happens in episode 3. But everything you see of the train is VFX, with some second unit for the wheels, and obviously, as Joe says, the interiors, you know, that's a set, but the exteriors of the train are our old friend CGI. And I, you know, it was a challenge, and it took a long time to finish.
I think even the train doors are being pulled by people, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I just write all the time, someone's going through the door, and then you suddenly get to set and you realise there's 3 guys on either side. You don't think it's going to take that, do you? And then you just write them walking back through the door again, these guys are...
What for you, and what was the biggest challenge in terms of writing it? Because you set yourself this task where you're writing a 6-hour journey on screen in real time. You're introducing loads of characters, and you cunningly get rid of loads of characters. In that first episode, you retain like a good dozen characters, and you have to create interesting, vivid, different people, including the Secretary of State for Transport, which is a genius move.
I think that's the hard thing, isn't it, in writing that? Because maybe in my first draft, you kind of introduce everyone, you try and get them talking a bit earlier, and then you realise you just got to calm down, pace yourself a bit, because we've got 6 hours here, and, you know, you're going to almost thumbnail them at the beginning. We go, this is the journalist, this is the transport secretary, these people are, and then as it goes on, we're going to get to know them more, and maybe we'll see them not as we see them now. You know, we'll know a lot more about them. I mean, one thing I was really keen on was that once we worked out what passengers we're going to have, so often you can have characters just facilitating someone else's story, can't you? You know, facilitating someone else's journey. And in terms of for the passengers and the people in the centre, I desperately wanted them to, you know, there's only so much screen time you can have when there's so many characters, but I wanted them to have their own story and have their own journey. And sort of there were 17 really strong, I think, characters there, and 17 great performances. I mean, there might be more than 17. Don't count that performances. but 17 such strong performances. I'm so pleased because then you watch it and you go, and everyone there, we've got such great passengers and as I say, great security, cybersecurity centre staff, that they all have their moments where they really come, and being so good, they absolutely nail them. And that I was dead chuffed with that, because you're doing it on the page, but then you realise we've got such good people that they can absolutely land it in. Even though it's kind of it's quality over quantity in terms of the scenes that they get, I think.
And it must have been fun casting these people, like David Threlfall and Cosmo Jarvis, all these great people to play vivid characters.
Yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
yeah. I mean, we were so lucky. Amy Hubbard was our casting director, and we were so lucky because I think when you're doing an ensemble cast and you've got two clear lead characters, but it's exactly what Nick says. If you don't feed enough for the ensemble cast to get their teeth into, then you're not going to get the best of the best. And we're really lucky, the balance. We've got the best of the best, and we've got a fantastic story for all of them to carry through in every episode. Everybody has their moments, and that's how you get great actors. You have great writing. It's as simple as that.
I think that was a key thing as well. Just saying that I had the design. I sort of sketched out something myself of a train based on looking on train websites, and then eventually it was replaced by Tom the designer's amazing design. And you saw it, didn't you, on my wall? And I desperately wanted it to use that in a really good way, rather than looking at an intimidating thing, that almost behind every door there was a story. So that's how I tried to think about it. So we start with the locomotive at the front. Obviously, we can see that story. But then we're going to the seated carriage, and we know how that's going to work. So it's the seated carriage, so everyone's paid less for the tickets. So they're going to have their own lives there, and their own reason they paid less. Then we get in the club lounge. We're going to establish a bit about that. There's going to be one knobhead in there. We know.
Know where he is.
We know that.
Alex Burns.
Yeah, that's it. And then we're going into the cabins. We know, there's going to be interesting people in each of those, but also there might be interesting objects in there as well, and things that might ratchet things up, and so all the time, and going all the way to the back where you've got the luggage area, where there's someone hiding in it. Try to work it out like that. Well, what could be the story behind every door?
I said I've got to watch James Cosmo, of course, not the brilliant James Cosmo. And you, Joe, have to bond. You bond with a kid. That's one of the kind of things I liked about the whole thing. With Mouse. And who I think is here as well.
Yeah, where is he? Adam, give us a wave.
Adam Mitchell. Shout out to Adam Mitchell, who's absolutely brilliant, particularly in that scene when he's looking for his mum. It's absolutely devastating. Always a delight working with him.
I just thought I'm going to be out of work very soon. This kid's taking over. He's a really just way more intelligent kid than I was when I was his age, and just emotionally aware, and just a great young actor. And those scenes are it's just such a nice little through line that Nick's written. You sort of learn a bit more about my past and my own background, and sort of why myself and Mouse are so connected. And so that was a lovely addition.
And actually, you get to bounce off the great David Threlfall, certainly from episode 2 onwards when he arrives in the office. That must have been. How was that?
Yeah, it was. I haven't told him this actually, but when I was at drama school, there was a lot of Shakespeare at drama school, which was great. But I would go home and I'd watch my Shameless DVD over and over for inspiration. So then this job is just so weird that you have these idols, and then you find yourself being in the same room as them, complaining about how bad the coffee is, and you just think, like, what is my life? And I definitely had that with David the first day of shooting with him, and I just loved their relationship. It's like a father and daughter relationship, and it was just such a joy to film with him. And we did lots of night shoots together, and it was fab.
And you've got that world that you're in charge of, the National Cyber Security. So now this is a real place, right? It actually exists.
Do you know, there was an amazing moment with Cyber Andrew, who happened to say, when we were in the room, he went, well, do you know the National Cyber Security Centre is opposite Victoria Station? I was like, oh, thank you. Because when you're doing something real time, I thought she can actually get there. Yeah. And that's going to save me a whole act that she would be in a taxi.
And I used to run for the county, so it's pretty fast.
Yes, it didn't take long at all. Yeah, you still have the stairs.
Well, okay.
That is it, that red building that you see when it has the exterior of National Sat. That's it. That's the real one.
And so, did you replicate that of the set? You created the set, or how did that work?
That's a car showroom, isn't it?
It's an old car showroom interior, which is in Glasgow. But we didn't actually go into the National Cyber Security Centre. Don't worry. But the exterior, that red building, is wonderfully kind of hits in your eye.
And we went in it on the story. We sort of went in and walked round, and they looked at us suspiciously. And then
got in the foyer.
You went in the foyer, yeah.
Front door.
And what they do.
And also the Caledonian Sleeper as well, because I love that sort of undercover missions to try and do research. So obviously, this is a fictionalised train, obviously. It's not the Caledonian Sleeper. It's fictional, absolutely fictional. Fictional, yeah. And but I went on the Caledonian Sleeper for inspiration a few times. And at one point, I was lying down on the platform. And I was trying to look under the train to work out how the gangways, how they connect, and that for story purposes. So I was looking, I had my pad and pen, I was looking down. And as I was looking, someone's shoes appeared there. And I looked up and it was the train manager standing there. And he went, what on earth are you doing?
I suppose he'd never you arrested.
I know, and I said I was just a train spotter, and he was fine with that.
No, he didn't. Didn't he correct you and give you a slightly
Railway
more
enthusiast.
We don't call them that.
Yeah, maybe that was suspicious, but I loved that, and we were just taking pictures of everything because that train. I mean, obviously there aren't so many 6-hour journeys in the country, but the thing with probably maybe people have got the sleeper, lots of people, but the thing with that train is, and the new sleeper, it's a different kind of train, isn't it? So it does kind of look like that, even though ours is fictional. The club lounge and everything. I loved it once I got on it and thought, it's such a great location to use.
Yeah.
Because I think when I've thought before about cyber shows or something cybery, sometimes cyber, it's almost too big, isn't it? You go, what? Do you know, I can't picture it in my head. And you're thinking, well, how can we put that into a precinct, into a specific space, and then make it work and sit and see how it works? And that was a great one.
Hackjack, is that a real word, or was that coins?
Hackjack, yeah. So at some point I read the word hackjack and I thought that's the greatest word I've ever heard in my life because it definitely got a show in it. At this time, there was no show called Hijack or anything. So I always feel like I seem a bit small having put that line in there. Because I wrote that before there was any show called Hijack. It's not a slight. Great, that is great. But I thought the word was so interesting. And, I'm sure at some point there will be hackjacks, I'm sure there will be hackjacks. Unless people like railway firms that they maybe give a little bit of their profits and invest it in security. That would be a good idea, I'd have thought, if they watch the show.
I'm going to throw open to the audience in a sec. Just before I do, though, Kate, I want to ask you, having seen the whole thing, and I have to reveal, spoiler alert, not everyone dies. So there could, in theory, be a second series of this show. But how would that be affected by the Euston new film news that broke on Friday?
Yeah, I have. Not everybody in the room may have followed Broadcast magazine quite as avidly as some of the rest of us have over the last week. Yes, this is the last show of the current iteration of Euston Films that Nimi and I started 10 years ago. And I would like to say just a little thing. Thanks, Boyd. One is that that if the audience and the BBC wanted a second Nightsleeper, Nick and I, would love to talk about it, and there is a pathway towards that. So it's not just because Euston Films is being, I think the Americans use the word shuttered. It's not the end of possibilities for Nightsleeper. I also want to say a really big thank you to, obviously to the BBC, and that was my alma mater, and it matters to me so much that this show's on the BBC, and the first show that Euston Film made, like Hard Sun was also on the BBC. So I want to thank the BBC, but I also want to thank FMI, who are our distributors, because they have been so supportive on this, and particularly want to thank Jill and Rebecca, and Bob and Jens, who run FMI. And this show, they were the ones I did the pitch about the, and then the points changed. And they were like, to do them justice, they went, wow, But they have been with us, and they've been, they've had to have deep pockets, but they've always been enthusiastic. And I know they've announced some of the sales, and the show is selling internationally. And in these days, public service broadcasters like the BBC need international partners to make shows of scale. We all know that. So FMI have been tremendously supportive. But I also want to say that, we've had an amazing 10 years. We've made 7 shows that Nimi and I are very, very proud of. We made Hard Sun, Dublin Murders, Baghdad Central, The Sister, 2 series of Rec, and now Nightsleeper. And we want to thank all the talent and the teams who've worked with us, a lot of whom are here. And most of all, I want to thank Nimi. When we started, she was creative director. I'd never run anything other than the department at the BBC with all the support that you get internally at the BBC. And now we're joint MDs. And, here's to the next adventure. Dear Nimi, and thank you so much for everything.
Yeah, I think that is interesting, because I definitely, like, in my head at first, you try and think of references, and ultimately, look, I can think to myself, I want it to be a bit Brief Encounter meets Speed, meets Murder on the Orient Express, meets The Poseidon Adventure, meets Yellow Jackets, and 24. Meets 24, and you can go through those things, and then ultimately you think, I think it just needs to be a bit Nightsleeper-y. Do you know, that's really what it is. Difficult to sell it on that, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But I think it is a bit of its own thing that it ultimately has to be. And in some ways, it doesn't feel like a typically British show to do. Yeah, I was really determined that there would be so much Britishness to it because of the trains, And I think for me, the way into it is, I love a thriller. Love watching a thriller. Sometimes when you watch something and it's really good and everything, but you're not so bothered about the characters. You don't care so much. So I think for our way, with the 2 things I desperately wanted was heart, a load of heart, and a bit of humour. And those 2 things, I thought that's what it needs: heart and humour all the time. And as big a heart as possible, really. And I thought that might make it a bit different and feel its own thing and have its own charm and spirit. Hopefully, that was the aim. Oh, relieved. So we had Laura that did episode 4 and 5, and she was ace as well. And I think the thing with it is, she did a great job on the scripts, but also I do love having someone who you can just talk to, or obviously not talk to, WhatsApp. You don't talk to anyone, do we? But you can just run things past people and always feel better if someone responds to an idea or something like that. In relation to the first bit, I love the idea of just writing there's a chase. That would save me so much time. Do you know that I was so bought into doing a real-time thing, and then I don't think I'd really thought it through, because then when I sat down to write the script and I got to the end of scene 1, lovely scene, and then you get to the end and you write cut 2, and I was like, cut to what? I can't cut to anything. This is an absolute nightmare. and then, because in my head at first, Joe was going to walk through the train and we would see everyone. And then I was like, it's going to take half a show. Something's going to have to happen. He's going to have to run. And we're going to have to meet people with a bit of economy here. And so you sort of get into that way of telling it. But yes, you're right. Everything. But then, and then Jamie changes bits, the director, and you sort of work together on it.
Well, the thing with it was, half of it is shot in the studio. Like the interior of the train is in a studio. So every time we're on the train, that's in a studio and somewhere else. And then every time we're off the train, that's in Glasgow station. You know, so it was like it's a massive jigsaw puzzle. So I'm like, right, for one moment I'm running, then 3 months later I shot the other bit. You know. And I think I shot one bit when I just came back from Glastonbury, so it was like I looked a little bit different. It was quite good though for the character. He had to look a bit worse for wear, so it was perfect. There wasn't much makeup required, but yeah. It's a jigsaw puzzle really. It's two different bits, and yeah, we did a lot of takes, a lot of running, but all part of it.
So you had to maintain your exact length of facial hair when you came back from Glasgow?
No, that's fake. The beard's fake.
Ah.
No, it's not. Yeah, I had to. I was only there for 3 days, then I came back, so I didn't grow that much. It was all right. We were filming.
Wow.
We were filming in Glasgow Central Station.
It's a busy station.
4 a.m. on a Saturday. What do you think? Yes, that was like. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
But actually, Network Rail made it easy. Actually, the funny thing about Glasgow is there's quite a lot of filming in Glasgow Central. They're a bit blasé about it. Actually, they have. I think there's an odd doc, isn't there, in Glasgow called Central something or. But I mean, so they were like, you know, yeah, whatever, and we're very relaxed. But Victoria Station was surprisingly excited, and the station manager in Victoria was, she was on it the whole night. I mean, she was kind of wanting to know what was happening. She was so involved. It was really lovely, actually. So I think because the guys at Network Rail were so helpful, it could have been a nightmare. And actually, it wasn't. Actually, they isn't that right, Jonathan? They made access, so easy for us.
Brilliant. I think we have actually run out of time. Thank you so much to your question. Thanks so much to the panel. Just to confirm, you would all be up for series 2, I presume. Yeah,
we
good.
can't possibly tell you who makes the end credits.
Right, that's true. No spoilers. Good luck with the show. So it all arrives on Sunday on iPlayer and at 9 o'clock.
And that
Sunday
won't be
and Monday.
delayed.
Nightsleeper. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for coming.